Yeah,
Who is that guy?
I don't know. But whoever he was, he's weird and pissed off.
It's just a case of heart versus heart. Things that we feel. Sometimes I better left unsaid. He's here with you. She's here with me.
Your greetings everyone, Deadeye here. I am joined by my super clean, non-corrupt and entirely mentally stable co-host Mr. Molotov, and this is The Movie Pill. If you find yourself in dismay over the current quality of movies, then we have the prescription. For our inaugural outing, the medicine comes in the form of what may be the most 80s movie ever made. The Wraith, sort of starring Charlie Sheen and Sherilyn Fenn's titties. We hope you enjoy, and don't forget to like and blah blah blah. So anyways, Mr. Molotov, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm feeling just fantastic today. Glad to make my broadcasting debut here with you, Ducky.
Well, yes, yeah, I'm very excited about this because I think this is actually a really good movie that I've chosen to do this for. Because the whole point of this, I think we were talking before, is basically to try and put a positive spin back into movies, really, because right now we aren't going through a particularly great era, as Quentin Tarantino has pointed out, although he shat on the 80s, so fuck him and his, foot-loving ways. But at any rate, we're here to try and, bring up the good stuff, really. The good shit from the past.
And the 80s certainly were a better time for movies. I mean, they were a time where a lot of cool and unique ideas got transferred to the screen, and a lot of films were made for relatively low budgets today, for things that certainly would be passed on by studios, major studios at least.
Yeah.
And we got a lot of great time capsules of the era and its aesthetic and its sort of I don't want to say mentality, but its ethos almost. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get you. It's particularly on like you're talking about the budget side of things. I mean, my favorite director, John Carpenter, he made a lot of his best movies in this time, and he made them on budgets that, like, nowadays, you would consider barely a budget, really, especially. But today we're talking about, as I said before, we're going to talk about The Wraith, and this is actually an independently made film. This wasn't a big studio movie. Yeah, this is actually a fairly kind of small-time cult movie, although it does have some fairly well-known names in it. Of course, Charlie Sheen being one of them, and my favorite guy in this film, Randy Quaid.
Oh yes.
Because if you watch this film, right, you will be made aware of the criminal lack of movies nowadays starring Randy Quaid as an angry small-town sheriff.
They really should have turned this into a trilogy. They're just focusing on his exploits, and all of the pieces are in place for this to seamlessly transfer over into a weekly television series where I'll just say it right now, but Billy, the brother of the space cyborg / synthwave angel, who comes back from the grave, played by Charlie Sheen, ends up with the figurative Wraith, the Dodge Interceptor, that is the focus of the film. And I wouldn't be surprised if they transform this into a weekly television series where the Wraith is driving down the highways of Arizona and solving mysteries, aided by Randy Quaid's sheriff character. I mean, all the pieces are in place for that. And they sort of even implied that that's going to be the case when Charlie Sheen drives off into the sunset with his love interest, and says the instructions are in the glove box, even though this is a supernatural vehicle from space or from heaven or someplace. They never really explain. That comes with instructions.
I read an interview with the director, Mike Marvin, I believe is his name. He said that I think he said that the film wasn't like a supernatural thing. He saw it as like a sort of interdimensional thing. Like it, I mean, when you look at it, it doesn't look supernatural. It looks more sci-fi, fantasy, type thing.
That's definitely the aesthetic. I mean, like in the few scenes where the figure who is revealed to be Charlie Sheen gets out of the Wraith and walks around, he looks like a cyborg of some sort, or an android, or whatever the case may be. But they imply at the end when he's talking to Carrie, his love interest, who is ineptly played by an actress that I will never remember her name.
It's Sherilyn Fenn, who is probably most well known for playing Audrey Horne in Twin Peaks.
Yeah, totally forgettable. But she it sort of implied, at least to me, that he some sort of like aimed back from the grave. He's all like, "Oh, I traveled so far for you, and this was as close as I could get to how I looked before." And like, who is this guy? How did he come back here? Him being some kind of angel back from death is the only explanation that makes sense, because what interest would aliens have in resurrecting this Billy or whatever his name was to get revenge on a gang of road pirates led by the cast of the villains from class of 1984.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this. I think actually, I saw this movie once before, and I didn't really like it all that much. And I think one of the reasons why I didn't like it all that much was that kind of lack of answers. But now that I watch it again, and I know what I'm getting into, because I mean, one of the things that you would get wrong by looking at, say, the poster for this film, it kind of looks like an almost Goonies-esque adventure where you've got all these people sort of gathered together on the cover, and it seems like there's some kind of group adventure thing going on here. That's not what it is. It's in fact the characters that are most on screen throughout this film are, well, the villains. Really, they're the gang of sort of chop shop artists who race people in in the sort of Arizona deserts. And that's one of the things I like about this movie is the setting. Apparently it was around Tucson, Arizona. So it's like in the fucking desert. It's like you can definitely see the sort of take on like Mad Max and Road Warrior and whatnot. The director is like a big fanboy for a lot of these movies.
One of my criticisms of this film, just before we move on, is it's certainly not that easy to transfer ownership of a vehicle. You don't just sign a pink slip and hand it over. In real life, the state would be chasing these people down for tax on the vehicle, and for vehicle registration fees. It just wouldn't happen that way, and you could certainly go to the police after the fact and say, "Oh, well, they threatened to kidnap, beat up, and rape my girlfriend if I didn't race them," and then they cheated in the race. So it was certainly done under duress.
Yeah, especially since the sheriff of this particular area, I don't think we're ever given the name of the town, but especially since the sheriff is Randy fucking Quaid, and this guy is he's pretty hardcore. He's not fucking around. That is mostly the focus. You see these villains for most of the film, and the main, I guess what you would normally call the main characters, the protagonists, like Charlie Sheen's character and Sherilyn Fenn's character, they're not really the main focus. The film's actually kind of strangely dreamlike. It's almost like if you took if like David Lynch were to make like a cheesy 80s cornball fucking sci-fi action flick.
Very much so, I would agree. And there's no real sequences in the film that are like, normal life, really. You know what I mean? No. For these characters.
Oh no, absolutely not. You don't get you don't get to see like what Charlie Sheen does when he's not on screen. You don't get to see what Billy Hankins is doing, other than I mean, they're implied to be high school students, I think, especially since you'll see Sherilyn Fenn walking down the road and she's wearing a backpack and everything. But the only place that you see them, for the most part, is either at this water hole where everyone just sunbathes,
wearing their shirts with people with dudes that they've just met in Billy's case.
Yeah, exactly. Or they're at what was it, Big K's Burgers, I believe it's called.
Big K, I could go for a Big K burger one of these days.
And once again, I have to say, watching this movie, you are now aware of the lack of burger joints where you are served by beautiful roller skating jailbait.
It was a better time. It was a simpler time.
Almost certainly. It's like you say, it's you don't really see much into the lives of these characters, and really you don't need to. It's not really that kind of movie. Like I say, it's probably the most 80s movie ever made because it really is like very style over substance for the most part. Even
just in that intro sequence at the beginning where the Wraith comes to Earth and takes physical form as the Dodge Interceptor, that is synthwave aesthetic personified. Synthwave or Outrun being the 80s inspired musical genre that's taken a lot of popularity in the last decade or so. A lot of people link that to the 2011 film with Ryan Gosling, Drive. But like this is basically Synthwave the movie. Yeah. But without synthwave music. I mean, the original score is actually quite good for a film of this type. But what really stood out to me was the presence of some kick-ass music of the era.
Yeah.
This is probably the only movie I've ever heard Ozzy Osbourne's music in.
Yeah, apparently
and of all songs, it was "Secret Loser" from the Ultimate Sin, the album that he since disowned. For being too cheesy 80s. For being too cheesy 80s. It's probably one of his best fucking records. And it's probably precisely because it's got that cheesy 80s kind of feel to it. It's great. That's the kind of shit I like. But as you're saying, it's this movie is kind of Synthwave the movie because I thought that it does look like the kind of movie that you would see someone make nowadays as a sort of 80s Renaissance movie, because we've got this 80s Renaissance shit going on right now, which some of which is not unwelcome, but how things can be ruined after a while. It can basically, the 80s Renaissance can basically be divided into Stranger Things and not Stranger Things. But yeah, my point being that it comes off like something that would be made nowadays that is sort of paying homage to the 80s aesthetic, but maybe takes it a little like in like an exaggerated direction where you've got fucking, like you say, you've got this almost DeLorean like fucking Dodge Interceptor, this very sleek 80s looking product, and then and you've got the guy who's he looks like a fucking motorcycle rider from space, and but here obviously this is the real deal. It's from the 80s. It's actually made in the era. It looks like an overlong, I guess, synthwave music video. I mean, I'm surprised that no one's re-edited. I'm sure parts of this film. I'm sure someone has. I'm sure someone has. Like, you look it up. I'm sure someone will have made. In fact, I think. Well, I mean, people have made music videos of this using what is probably the most well-known track from this soundtrack and most used in the film, which is "Hold On Blue Eyes" by Mark Tiemens, I believe. I don't think he ever really did much of anything else, but I remember seeing a music video someone had made of that. As we were saying earlier, the villains really are the focus of this movie, and it's almost interesting in that way because when we're shooting a movie about revenge from beyond the grave, somebody that they've murdered, it is prescient to shoot it from their perspective more or less, because they're the ones who are being hunted. They're the ones who are imperiled with this unstoppable force, and ultimately they're the ones who are all going to die. One thing I noticed about this movie, particularly with respect to the villains or the antagonists or the protagonists, whatever they are, who's this movie even really about? one thing I noticed about this, a lot of the scenes, particularly focusing on the villains, will linger for about 15 or 20 seconds longer than a modern movie would probably end the scene and cut away. And in that time, I noticed that they add a lot of extra characterization to whoever's on the screen, and it's usually the villains. With just sort of random lines that drop or offhand remarks that they make to each other. And you wouldn't find that in a modern movie. Like everybody in this movie, the actors, I mean, knows their role, and they're all really into it. Part of you wondered if a lot of this movie was actually ad-libbed. Particularly Skank and Gutter Boy, who I really want to see a prequel film about.
They make me, those guys. I also think like they're the sort of characters that would show up in a Joe R. Lansdale story, or like a Joe R. Lansdale Jonah Hex comic or something like that. But yeah, like in fact, one of them actually. You're talking about lines of dialogue. Like one of them actually nicks a line of dialogue from John Carpenter's The Thing. Did you notice that?
Yeah, there were quite a few little homages to other work, and I did pick up the line from The Thing. I know you did.
Yeah, the guy, one of them says, it's weird and it's pissed off, and I was like, holy shit, that's a line from The Thing. And I read, like I say, I read the interview with the director, and he said that, that apparently that was one of the few ad-libs in the film. According to him, they, for the most part, the film is filmed as written, but there are occasional little ad-libs that the actors made, and that was one of them that they left in the film. And yeah, we do have some interesting people in this film, actually. Like I said, I mean, you have Charlie Sheen and Sherilyn Fenn, but they're probably like the worst actors in the movie, particularly Charlie Sheen. But then Charlie Sheen himself is not in the film that much.
I feel that Charlie Sheen plays mostly the same character.
He does.
in all of these movies from this era. Red Dawn, this one, they're all very like stoic, sort of bland, milquetoast almost.
You could see how he worked in movies like the Hot Shots movies, because he has that kind of deadpan delivery. Because and that works for that kind of spoof movie, like it's sort of in the way that Leslie Nielsen worked, because he had that deadpan way of delivering things. Although he's not as good as Leslie Nielsen was. You also have people like. You have like Clint Howard, who probably has one of the most memorable hairstyles in any movie ever.
He's one of the more interesting characters in the movie to me, because he didn't seem to fit in with that gang at all.
No,
he was like the geeky nerd archetype, but here he is rolling with this gang of ruthless road pirates who run a shop, and he was the only one to figure out that this was the Wraith before taking his blueprints and beating it.
Yeah, he's the only one that
retaliation.
He's the only one that survives, isn't he?
Yeah, he's the only one who gets away with it, because he actually implies that he wasn't down with their murderous activities and had no knowledge or part in them. As they walk through the rubble of the destroyed shop, and all I'm thinking to myself the whole time is, why isn't Randy Quaid putting this man under arrest?
Well, why isn't Randy Quaid just rounding them all up and sticking them in a jail cell? I mean, we have to ask.
He's got a confession in that moment, but as we know from the ending of the movie, Randy Quaid's character does not give two shits about actually doing his job, and he makes no pretenses about that. He just drops the investigation at the very end of the movie.
That's why
lets it all go. Moves on with his life.
Well, that's what I love about Randy Quaid in this movie. Is just that he's just this hard ass that just goes around, being a dickhead to these guys who deserve it, quite frankly.
And there were some fantastic, one-liners and insults that were laid in this movie, that really give you some insight into the characters. I'm just looking at some of the notes that I put together for this, and I can't remember the name of the actress. I'm sorry, but she played Carrie, the love interest.
Yeah, Sherilyn Fenn. Where
she just bursts out at Nick Cassavetes' character, who's the embodiment of 80s toxic masculinity. And I can't believe they actually use that expression in a descriptive way.
Well, we all know toxic masculinity is actually good.
Very unlike me. Yeah. But she just bursts out at him when he plans on going to Santa Barbara, of all places, to elude the Wraith. Santa Barbara. Real random city there, Nick. Sorry, Packard. She says, I'd rather have Gutter Boy's Cretan children than be with you. Which implies that she's given some thought to this.
She's given some thought to actually shagging Gutter Boy.
And in another scene, Gutter Boy remarks that he is, quote, a 4-day virgin. And those are his last lines before he's killed by the Wraith. Which implies to me that Gutter Boy actually gets around, despite being a complete trailer trash dumbass.
Well, you know, some women have low standards, I suppose. You know, I'm guessing out in the desert.
It's a small town.
Yeah, it's a small town out in the desert. I imagine there's probably not much of a choice in the gene pool there.
You go to Big K's Burgers, you do some drag racing, you hook up. It's a casual Friday. Go down to the watering hole the next morning. Lay on some towels, put your shirt on.
But yeah, so this film has actually got some pretty cool action in it, like car chases. There's
very much so.
One of my favorite ones is the one where Skank and Gutter Boy, I believe, or no, it's Skank and Gutter Boy. They're chasing after Charlie Sheen, who's got like his fucking shitty dirt bike. Because Charlie Sheen has two forms in this movie. He has cyborg motorcycle guy from space, and he has Charlie Sheen, which means that pretty much everyone, within a block's vicinity of him has to go and take a blood test. But that aside, there's he's got on this this shitty little chopper cycle that he has. He gives a ride to Sherilyn Fenn. And Skank and Gutter Boy see him, and so they chase after him, apparently planning to just flat out kill Charlie Sheen with a shotgun, and possibly even put Sherilyn Fenn's character in danger, thereby putting themselves in danger if fucking Packard finds out. And
wacky high school hijinks.
Yeah, but what I love about that scene is that basically Charlie Sheen just eludes them. He doesn't do much of anything else. They fuck themselves. They get the shotgun and just fire it into the fucking car and blow out the steering, and then they just roll their own car. Like, Charlie Sheen does fuck all except just be a bit faster than them.
And that's really the primary superpower of the Wraith as, a supernatural weapon of vengeance. Its chief superpower is, one, going fast, right? And two, tricking people into driving into it, driving off the road, or otherwise hurting themselves. At no time does the Wraith actually use violence against, its enemies, with the notable exception of the very end when it drives into the chop shop, causing a massive explosion.
Yeah, that's mental. That, like, he just drives straight into the chop shop, and then the chop shop just explodes. Like, that's it. Like, there's no. The only other time that I can think of the motorcycle guy from space using violence is at that chop shop before, where he shows up with what looks like some kind of cybernetic Spaz 12. It looks like something that you would get in Cyberpunk.
With a wooden stock.
Yeah, it's got a wooden stock. It's got a wooden stock, but it looks like it's linked. It's got like some kind of cyber aim link up again, like you would get in Cyberpunk. And he just goes in there and shotguns the shit out of every single car in there, while Packard stands there with his dick in his hands, completely helpless. It's it's a fine scene, and a lot of the car chases are pretty fine. Apparently, actually, a stuntman died.
Bruce Ingram. Yeah, he was a camera operator who was killed during the execution of one of the stunt race scenes. It is notable that no manslaughter charges resulted from this film, as they did on the set of the Twilight Zone movie just a few years ago.
Yeah, I knew you were going to bring that up.
Very similar circumstances. An on-set death caused by negligence.
You know what?
On the part of the film crew, and it's a this was during the period of time when the John Landis trial was ongoing, right? So this is all really high profile stuff in Hollywood.
Well, the Twilight Zone movie would have been obviously a bigger budget studio movie, and plus children were involved in the Twilight Zone one, and it was apparently in violation of California law regarding the use of children on film sets. But speaking of on-set deaths, this film kind of reminds me of The Crow in some ways.
Yes.
It's like it's basically like if you got David Lynch to make The Crow in the 80s and then just gave him a shit ton of coke.
What if The Crow was a car?
Yeah, basically. What if The Crow was a shiny fucking Dodge Interceptor? Although with The Crow, obviously with The Crow, you've got more of a focus on the protagonist,
and overtly unambiguous supernatural elements.
Oh yes, very much so. In this, like we say, it's they don't really go into character depth or anything like that. It is very much, like I say, it's a very dreamy movie in the sense that it's a very set, like, sort of environment that you're in with this film. You've got the watering hole, you've got like the
burger joint.
You've got the burger joint. You've got the roads in in the desert. Occasionally you'll see like a street in what appears to be a small town, but you don't really see much of anything else. You don't really see people going around except for at the burger joint and at the sort of lakeside where people seem to be, like you say, sunbathing with their shirts on and everything. I liked what you were saying before about the character Billy Hankins showing up and meeting Charlie Sheen's character for the first time and just sort of getting into an in-depth conversation with him.
In the first 3 minutes of their acquaintanceship, he explains that his brother was mysteriously murdered and nobody knows who did it, but it was probably that guy over there.
Yeah, it was probably that guy over there, and that's kind of weird. I noticed that you have scars on your body, Mr. Sheen, that seem to match up perfectly with the scars that were on my brother's body. Like I said before as well, the film is very it's very fanboy. You can tell that there's a lot of influence from different films in this movie, particularly like westerns, like High Plains Drifter.
I would argue that it is a western.
Well, it is technically, yeah. I mean, I look at. One of the thing that I particularly I think is particularly memorable about this film is its setting, and for me, Texas and Arizona, particularly like the deserts and things like that, that's peak America.
You mean barren and lawless?
Barren and lawless, just how I like it.
But Arizona is a setting that's not particularly explored that often in film.
No.
So it is kind of cool to see something go down there back in 1986.
Having seen this is the first time you've seen this film, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I became aware of it a couple of years ago, but I was never actually able to find a copy. So I'm glad I got the chance to watch it finally. It wasn't quite what I was expecting, to be honest. I was expecting something a bit more polished, given the cast that were in it.
Yeah.
And as you said before, given the how it's presented, sort of in its marketing materials. That said, I'm glad that I got the chance to watch it. And, this movie really did sort of remind me of the class of 1984.
Yeah.
Which is a similar revenge style film. Definitely a lot grittier and nastier.
Oh, definitely. We'll have to watch that for the show.
Although there is certainly a lot of grit and nastiness and ugliness in this movie. There are some pretty brutal scenes that would not be emphasized in a movie, today in a similar fashion. Sort of on par with an exploitation film in some ways. We got a generous amount of female nudity.
Oh yes.
We got some really brutally executed, like viscerally executed murders. We got villains who are, irredeemable, cartoonish, and over the top. There's a lot to like here, basically, is the bottom line. Yeah. If you're into that sort of thing. And the movie really is a time capsule of its time. I mean, it's, Charlie Sheen being in the movie I guess he's the draw for a modern audience, looking into this movie. But
so.
and maybe Randy Quaid, if you're looking for recognizable names.
Oh, it was, certainly for me, it's Randy Quaid.
But all in all, this is a movie that's more like, as you said before, it's like watching a synthwave dream without the synthwave.
It's very sincere. It's a very sincere sort of movie, and it's got a kind of joyfulness to it in that sense, because it's not because sincerity is not something you see much of nowadays.
Not something you see any of these days.
Yeah, everything is ironic. Everything is
political.
Is sarcastic. Yeah, everything's political, of course, but more than that, it's it's insincere. I mean, you're seeing stuff like the fucking Velma HBO show, and of course the whole thing is just like this snarky, ironic, sarcastic nonsense, which apart from anything else, fucking parodies Scream for some reason. I don't know why. Like it feels like we haven't gotten past the 90s in terms of our culture. So I guess that's what I like about this movie. It's the sincerity of it, and it's got a good upbeat sort of ending, a kind of emotional ending actually. Because I actually thought that I mean it's corny. It's corny as hell. It's a very cheesy movie, but it's like I say, cheese is good for the bones. Nothing wrong with a bit of cheese. Especially with that fucking soundtrack, man. That's a fantastic soundtrack. It's got like Rebel Yell, Billy Idol on there. I love me some Billy Idol, and Hold On Blue Eyes, and of course you have
Motley
Crue as well. You've got Ozzy on there, and of course you have the king of the 80s soundtrack, Stan Bush, with Heart vs. Head.
Praise be his name.
Yeah, so I recommend checking out The Wraith if you love your cheesy 80s movies, and if you love your westerns, if you love if you like a bit of David Lynch in your cheesy 80s movies as well. Check this film out. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed this inaugural edition of Deadeye and Molotov's Movie Pill. I hope you feel better about films right now, just having listened to this. Because I think that there is some things to be optimistic about in terms of culture, and all we have to do is look back to the best eras of movies to really see how it's done, because then we can do it again going forward. So yeah, this has been Deadeye and Molotov's Movie Pill. I'm Deadeye. This is Mr. Molotov.
Ta-ta for now, and we'll see you real soon.
Yeah, and may you ride the night to the morning sun.
Stay based and movie pilled.